Welcome to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Every week, I'll be sitting down with a sales executive where they'll share their stories and experiences that produce game-changing results. Let's be honest, sales can be a tough game. I'm sure at some point, we've all delivered a less than stellar demo, been ghosted by a client or two, and sometimes maybe we did more talking than listening. And that's where I can help. The stories and insights our guests share can be applied to your own business, your territory, or with your team, so you're not reinventing the wheel. Our weekly tactics and strategies help you get out of your head and start creating your own path towards game-changing results. Welcome back to the K2 Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Karen Kelly. Now, those who are new to the podcast, we talk with sales leaders, experts in their field, and really learn what they're doing that's driving game-changing results, whether it's with themselves, their team, or just what they're seeing in the industry. And today I had the pleasure to have a conversation with Jamie Shanks. And Jamie is the CEO and founder of both Sales for Life and Pipeline Signals. And he's also the author of Social Selling Mastery. So it was a real treat to speak with Jamie and leverage all his insights from, being a CEO of two companies and an author. And weirdly, what we talked about was, salespeople, we love being in front of the customer and be customer facing, even if it's across video. But most of our time is unfortunately tasked with activities and doing research and things that, as he mentioned, there's $5 a job, $5 an hour jobs or $500 an hour jobs. So these $5 an hour jobs that are really taking us away from the purpose, the outcomes that we can generate if we're in front of our customers. So at Pipeline Signals, what they do is they're looking for relationship signals that are present in your account. So how can they gather that data and really put it in your CRM for you, so that it's a streamlined process. The data is there, the compelling events, and really what he focuses on are signals. And he mentioned three areas of sales intelligence was buyer intent, product usage, and the relationship. So having this type of information, even in the relationship, are they a friend or are they foe? And when you have all these pieces of the puzzle and you have insight, you see the bigger picture. So as you reflect or look at the leading indicators of your deal, you can realize, this new CRO here came from our competitors. So, that would fall under the relationship category. It might explain to you, why things are stalled at the signature, at the contract level. And so just what can these sales intelligence tools do for you to equip you with the tools, compress the sales cycle, and allow you to do what you were hired to do, is to sell. We also talked about really leveraging the left and the right brain, getting the structure, the framework in the left, but not losing sight of us as people. People want to buy from people. What are we contributing with our authentic self, our imagination, our curiosity, and just being, able to leverage both sides of them. And also adopting the mindset of, as sales professionals, how can we take the mindset of this is our business and really come at it from an entrepreneurial standpoint of, how can I look at the end goal and reverse engineer it and break down the steps to make it really easy. But unfortunately, some people still feel sales is it's a job and they're kind of checking in and they're not taking that ownership of it. And the beauty is as a sales professional, you can treat it like your own business, but without the risk of being an entrepreneur. So a lot of the things, mindset, a lot of tactics he shared. So definitely encourage you to take a listen. If there's anyone you feel would benefit from this, who might be banging their head against, I'm trying to elicit some triggers here, looking at changeover in management, new product launches, and they just don't know where to start. There's things that you definitely can do on your own to break through the noise and, really be buyer focused, because most emails, most outreach, a lot of time is just what we do and all about us. And that is a surefire way to not break through the noise. But also, if there is interest in Pipeline Signals, definitely we'll include the information on that in the link. So if you have any guest ideas that you feel we would benefit the show, please feel free to send them to info@k2perform.com. And as always, if you like the podcast, we invite you to subscribe to it and send us a review. Allow us to get greater visibility so we can get our message and our guests across a larger audience. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. with all the noise going on and people really trying to break through it, it becomes frustrating and it becomes overwhelming for sales professionals. And sometimes they might be actually, pulling the wrong information. So I'm delighted to be speaking with Jamie Shanks today, CEO of most recently Pipeline Signals, to walk us through and really educate us on what he's seeing in the industry and how, obviously, give us a solution as what we can do to move forward and be that trusted advisor and really stand out. So welcome to the podcast, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. It was always nice again to have a fellow Canadian on here as well. So I think we're not too far apart, which is great. So, looking at your background, you were in the stockbroker industry, obviously a little bit different, although there's a selling component there. So, what was that transition like from being a stockbroker to sales, and what transferable skills kind of helped you bridge that gap?
Well, I thought when I was to become a stockbroker, that was my dream since grade nine. I used to do my job shadow days at what was then called Burns Fry, which became Bank of Montreal's Nesbitt Burns. And I literally wore the suspenders and the suit and the. I looked like Regis Philbin. I know I'm dating myself, but he used to wear the same colored tie and the same colored shirt. So long and the short is, I became a stockbroker. And I was there during the dot-com crash of 2000, 2001. It completely jaded me to the industry. I didn't want to be a salesperson, only to find out that a stockbroker is a salesperson. So then I left to Australia, did my master's, lived in Australia for a couple of years. And when I came back, the only company that would hire me, it took a year to get a job, was in commercial real estate in downtown Toronto, 100% commission. And it turns out I had a knack for booking meetings. I was great at prospecting. And so my transition wasn't planned. My transition was happenstance of needing money. But it turns out that I was able to approach CFOs and CEOs. That's my buyer persona in commercial real estate. I could approach them with ease and confidence. I was strong at rebuttals. This is like the pinnacle of cold calling. I know that it's had a diminishing usage and ROI over years, but this is like the heyday of cold calling. So to answer your question directly, the transition wasn't planned, but it turned out to be easier for me than I expected.
And it's funny when you say, stockbrokers and not selling, you go back to Dan Pink's book to sell. Everything we do is selling these days. Like we're always trying to influence, persuade. So it's funny when you talk to people and I hate selling. I was like, well, do you like helping people? Do you like getting them closer to they want to be? Well, you're a salesperson. So just picking up on what you said, the cold calling and you were great at prospecting and you were able to do it with ease and confidence and get in front of those rebuttals. Where do you think that came from? Like that, was it natural? Was it just that, as you said, that hunger for money you had to get out of a tough spot, or where did that come from?
I think it's a trifecta. I think it's number one. I was comfortable at speaking, comfortable going into a room that I didn't know anyone. Number two, it was a sheer desperation. I mean, I was $50,000 in the hole from my master's degree. I didn't have two pennies to rub together. That's part two. And part three is, I believe, I fast forward now 20 years, right? I've been an entrepreneur. I'm a two-time entrepreneur. And when I look at my super skills, I tend to feel like I can see around corners. I have the ability to see the process, the objective process that's within things. So cold calling didn't seem art, it seemed science to me. It seemed that there was a process to follow: what you say it, how you respond, order of operations of pre planning, calls to action. So, long and the short is, there are those that find selling to be some black magic, like you were born to be a seller. No, I actually think that it can be learnt. In commercial real estate, the CEO of the company I was with was the head of Xerox Canada for the longest time. So he brought huge amounts of sales enablement into our commercial real estate space. And I learned from some of the best cold callers and email script writers. We learned about general benefits statements and specific benefit statements and what's called the FAB, feature, advantage, and benefit. And like these are, 15, 20-year-old sales methodologies. But I saw how selling can be processed different than I think a lot of people.
Interesting, because I see selling as a system, and again, that is left brain. But I believe that we need both. We definitely need, because people 53% of the reason they buy is you, right? So how can you, if you're just scripted and you're following a framework, that's great. There's predictability. But how do you create that authenticity, that rapport? And for me, that's the person, and that's just allowing you to shine through.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there, of course, there's in my trifecta, there is a piece of that right brain, which is maybe I'm likable, I guess.
Yeah, well, I would say remove the maybe. If you're a double time entrepreneur and you did so well, you're probably more than likable, which, as we know, people know, like, and trust. So just on that note, what are your thoughts now on the know, like, and trust? Does that still stand true?
Oh, I mean, 100%. My, you know, I actually tell my mother this. It's funny, I'm born in 1978, so I went to university in 1997. And when I was leaving the university, my mom used to say, "It's not who you know, it's what you know. You need great grades, and you go to university in your commerce department and learn, and the stars will align." But ironically, that other component, who you know, is really important, and building a network is critically important, and that served me well. So, as you mentioned, the like, the know, the trust. I've made it a mission to build a large social network since about the age of 30, and it took years, and sometimes it felt like I was putting my head against a wall. But now, as a guy who starts a second company, and I'm able to build it from zero to $1 million in under 12 months, it's a lot of it because of a network. And
Hmm.
so there's a saying: the time the best planted tree was obviously 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. If you haven't already begun to develop a great social network, then the time is now, because what it will do for you 5, 10 years from now, you won't even be able to articulate what that will bring you. Because 10 years ago, if you told me what it would have done for me then, I wouldn't have believed you. So I
Hmm.
think that like trust piece is also inherently important, is the building of your own personal database for the like and trust. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I would also agree that it's who you know. Hugely, what you know is great, but if you talk to the wrong person, they don't care. So it's all for nothing, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So a network is huge, just socially, and getting your point of view across, and being around what the average of the five people you surround yourself with. So for those people who are saying, well, yeah, 20 years ago would have been nice, but now is the second best option. Can you give them two or three things to get them started, or for those who are on their way to really take that network to the next level and really ensure that what are ways to attract or socialize in the right with the right people?
Simplest and best thing that you can do is video a day will keep the doctor away. Every single day, use a tool like LinkedIn and build an audience, build a following. I know there's a million components to social selling, but one of the first frameworks is people have to believe that you are a trusted advisor. And reputation management is important. And when I started in 2012, I wrote a blog every day. Video wasn't pervasive, so you wrote a blog. And I did this for like 3 years. And I then would be invited to a webinar or be a guest contributor to an ebook. And I was asked to speak on stage, and the snowball began. And to this day, and I still need to make my video for today, I make a video nearly every day. And that keeps the audience engaged, that grows the audience. I think at this point I'm at 20 or 21,000 first degree connections. That doesn't mean that I know 21,000 people. It means that 21,000 people find what I'm saying of value in the sales community. And that serves me and will serve me no matter what happens to my businesses and my career. I can always lean on that. But it begins with a daily habit. And part of that daily habit is a video every day of best
Mhm.
practices, pitfalls, challenges. What am I seeing in the market?
Yeah. I love that. And the word that just stood out for me there, Jamie, was habit. I think, I don't know if you've read Atomic Habits or not, but James Clear, oh, I feel like I love James. I just love the way he did it, because I think when you think about sales and the top performers and just what you did is how can we create habits that, that drive behaviors that ultimately, produce results. And part of it is what you're doing is even for those who are perhaps reluctant to get in front of the camera. And at this point, we really shouldn't be. We're 2.5 years in. But like just that habit, that, tension under time, that leaning into the discomfort, by day 10, it's less uncomfortable, and we're starting to learn to live in the yuck. And then you're like, but I think also just what you said is it's not about us. So when you see that you have 21,000 people that find value, that might be helping, that might be taking one of your suggestions and seeing results out of it, it gives you that momentum to go, I'm going to keep going because I'm out of my head. I don't care what I look like or my voice sounds like. I'm actually helping people.
Yes. Yeah, and for me, I had even one of these inflection points into COVID. So I mean, I'd been making videos for years using a tool called Vidyard Video. It's out of Canada, fantastic. It allows me to share it via email, personalize LinkedIn, or put it publicly on LinkedIn, Twitter, any other social media. Long and the short is COVID happens, and if for any of you who have been, in business long enough, you notice that video making was very formal until March of 2020. And then all of a sudden, people stopped shaving and they're wearing, Bretts in their hair, and they're wearing sweatsuits. And then all of a sudden, not only the clothes changed, but the environment around them changed. People started making more videos outside or in their just regular day to day lives. And I was a little bit hesitant at first. I had always made fairly professional looking, even post produced videos. And then, now I'm living up at my cottage right now for the summer, but at our house, we have a swim spa. And I'll be making videos shirtless. Like I'm a 40 something year old guy. There's a lot better looking things than a shirtless 40 something year old guy. I'm making videos in a swim spa, right? Or I'm going on a jog, or I'm out in the boat. And so now the environment around you can change. Again, people are there. There's a little bit of entertainment, but at the same time, they're there to learn. So as long as you're providing value, you don't need to be prim and proper, wearing a suit or a blazer. You don't need any of that. It
Mhm.
doesn't need to be post produced.
And so, what do you think, Jamie, that has done to your connection and your engagement with your audience? Just allowing them to see you a little bit more, and conversely, seeing them perhaps not so buttoned up, and a cat in the background, a baby running around, whatever. Like, what has that done for, or what does that do for, people's connection, their ability to disarm and start building trust quicker?
Two fronts. One, humanized myself
Hmm.
more. Number two is my buyer persona actually changed, ironically, at the same time. So, Sales for Life, a global sales training company I've run for 10 years, sold to the chief revenue officer, chief marketing officer, 6-figure deals. So it was more, and because you're selling global sales training, there's a perception of the suit and tie, the trainer at the front of the room, the teacher, the teacher student relationship. My second company, Pipeline Signals, is a managed service slash SaaS software company that works on behalf of sellers. It happens that the program manager who runs revenue operations is the one that puts down the credit card and organizes the project, but it's sellers who benefit from our work. Well, us sellers, we wear sweatshirts, right? We're casual at work because we're working from home. And so I changed my attire and environment also because my buyer persona changed. And it ironically did start attracting more bottom up approach. So it's the sellers who notice me. Those sellers refer us to their head of enablement, head of operations, head of sales to bring us in.
Yeah, and selling bottom up is great. You get the groundswell, and you get the voice of the customer. It makes your case a lot stronger when you are going to the upper level. So, talking about change and just giving your solution or really supporting the buyers. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about I know you're the CEO of Pipeline Signals, but before we get into that, what are you seeing in terms of, the inability to break through? So there's a lot of noise out there. A lot of everyone's on virtual emails up 130, 40%. Responses are down 40%. And I know you look at, compelling events and trigger events, but what are people perhaps, what are you seeing that they're not doing? Is it just a spray and pray? Is it laziness? Or like, let's start with the kind of the negatives. What are you seeing this not working and not breaking through the noise?
And it's two components. So you and I both believe in the left and the right brain for prospecting. So I'll use that analogy. On the left side of the brain, I believe the most important decision you could ever make when prospecting is account selection and account prioritization. So on the left side of the brain, sellers are spraying and praying because they have lists of accounts that they're targeted by, named accounts just dumped at them, geography. Hey, I'm going after all of Ontario. That's where we live, and um, and or a vertical, a series of verticals, and then they just calling A through Z. There's no order of
Mhm.
operations. There's no why account A versus account B or today, not tomorrow. And so they're not using sales intelligence to at least filtrate which accounts do I focus in on and prioritize and segment now because of these things that are happening. So that's the left side of the brain. The right side of the brain is, I think, the biggest missing ingredient from the engagement is what's called the time to knowledge exchange. And when I read the cadences and sequences that sellers are using from my Sales for Life customers or my Pipeline Signal customers, most of the time the emails are, "Hey, John, we do this. It does X, Y, and Z. Would you like to meet?" And it's just like, what? Like, you're not putting yourself in the shoes of the customer. That customer's time is worth $1,000 an hour, and then a half-hour meeting has to be able to create $500 to $1,000 of value at that meeting for the buyer to exchange their time. When you're booking a meeting, if I'm booking a meeting with you, what you have to give me is time. What I have to give you, thus, must be knowledge worth more than that time.
Mhm.
And I am trying to earn that right. And so sellers are constantly trying to sell themselves via cold calls and emails and LinkedIn messages and not recognizing that what you're really trying to do is acquire time. Thus, you need to give knowledge that's bold and different and something you don't already know, that you recognize as the opportunity cost of not knowing more of that is more painful than giving up 30 minutes next Thursday. And I have to package something. And sometimes sellers will say, "Well, I don't know what that is." Well, you got to work internally to figure that out. It's got to be an insight, a study, a fact that you did competitive analysis, whatever it is. You've got to give them something they don't already know.
Mhm.
So that would be my two-part answer: left and right side brain.
Yeah, no, that's great. And how much of that, Jamie, falls on the sales leader to say, give them some framework and guidance as to, guys, we need to be leading with insight. We need to be buyers. Everyone uses the word buyer centric, but yet those emails that you just said, that's very seller focused. So how much falls on the leader? Yeah.
I think it stems a lot, because if you look at Pareto's law, if you look at an average sales team, Gartner even has it look like a bell curve. You've got, simple math: 20, 60, 20. 20% of players are A players, 60% are B players, 20% are C. Your B and C players in that cohort are more likely to be executors rather than innovators. What I mean by that is, an A player is strategic enough to design their own messaging and find their own internal resources to create stories that resonate, create their own insights, package up all their learnings from all their deals. The B and C players are going to execute the sales plays that the sales leaders bring forward to them. And like an army, you've got generals and you have foot soldiers, and the B and C players are just going to do what they're told. So they're going to go into SalesLoft or Outreach.io, click send on their message cadence, and just wait for them, the leads to pour in. And so if you know that that's going to happen, then it's on the sales leaders to recognize most of your sellers are executors, not innovators. You then have to back up, measure twice, cut once, build an actual storyboarded sales plays that are valuable, because your sellers are
Hmm.
just going to play the
And
playbook
that's
that's
the
given
sad
to them.
part without slamming sales leaders out there. It's, in their eyes, they're compliant. Like they're doing what we asked them to do, but it's like, but it's an out of date playbook. So check mark for A for effort, but it's not breaking through.
100%. Like you're able to press a send button. Good for you. Like
Yeah.
there's automated solutions that can do that.
Yeah, yeah, and then I just think, the A play they're only 20% and they are moving the needles, but, like, how about highlighting them and inviting them to share what they're doing so that we're, encouraging peer learning. We're, identifying any of those who potentially want to move up into leadership, but it just takes some of the work off the sales leader. But I think there's a respect there and there's a collaborative effort that if you're doing it well and it's succeeding and you've come up with it yourself, like why don't you share with the group? Like why are we reinventing the wheel or why are we letting the 80% fail when the 20% are doing it right?
100%.
So in terms of, breaking through, talk to us about, what should people be sending? What is breaking through? Is it the timeliness of it? Because it doesn't take long. I mean, I don't know what you would suggest, 5 to 15 minutes, even 15 might be too long, but just showing them you've done some homework.
Yeah, and there's actually one of my favorite processes that work. It's called 3x3 research. It was invented by a guy named Steve Richard, who owned a sales training company called Vorsight, started Exec Vision, sold Exec Vision to Mediafly. And 3x3 research is 3 minutes before you're stepping on a call or 3 minutes before you're about to press send on a message. You find three insights in 3 minutes. And
Hmm.
those can, ideally they're as more value laced than, hey, I notice you have a cat and I have a cat. But what you're really trying to do is find three insights. You quickly opened up their Form 10K. You checked out, you Google their name and don't just hit Google. Go to Google Images and Google Video. What conferences do they speak at? What do they find interesting and they talk about? You know, gather that intelligence, package it up, and be able to provide that type of intelligence back to them that shows that you've walked a mile in their shoes.
Hmm. And I would add to that a lot of, younger folks coming into sales, they think, well, I never walked in their shoes. But that's what, get on, go on LinkedIn and look for, job or roles and responsibilities of the CFO and understand what they do in a day to day to become empathetic, to really understand what motivates them, how they're measured, who influences them. So I think sometimes it's a cop out saying, well, I'm 25, I've never done the job. Well, you know what? I haven't either, but we can still appreciate what they've done either by talking to others out there, even within your own business. You have a CFO, go talk to him or her. What kind of emails are you getting? What do you have on your radar these days?
You actually said a trigger word for me. And I believe everything in life's Pareto's law, 20-80, 80-20. Um, I think 80% of sellers see sales and what they do as a job. And a job is something that I think you punch in, you punch out, you do it for X number of years, you collect a paycheck, you then retire. I don't think most sellers appreciate that you're in a form as close to an intrapreneur as as possible. You are a small business within a business and you must treat it as your own business. It has its own business plan. It has its own quarterly rocks. You own a portfolio. Most sellers don't recognize that you get to be an entrepreneur. You get the freedom of entrepreneurship for the most part, unless you're like a 23-year-old SDR being pinned down to a chair and making 1,000 calls a day. As you become a more senior seller, you have the work-life flexibility and autonomy that does an entrepreneur, but you don't have the same risks as an entrepreneur. You get a salary, you get healthy commissions, you get a book of business. That's what's entrepreneur. It's like an entrepreneur's dream, and that's what you're getting. But you're treating it like a wannabe entrepreneur. And a wannabe entrepreneur is like, it's cool that I have a business, but I'm going to stay on Instagram all day long, and I'm not really actually building the business. So it's unfortunate. I wish more sellers recognize that they get their own business if they want to grow it, but they have to treat it like an entrepreneur treats their
Hmm.
business.
I love that. And I would also go back again to the sales leaders and what kind of culture are they creating? Because what I see is when mediocrity becomes acceptable, they're not doing their jobs, and that's that they're not inviting them to take that entrepreneurial mind shift because it's like, you can read your slides, you can send this, you can do, and it becomes acceptable. that there's no motivation, there's no inspiration to go, I want to take this on my own, because what I'm doing, bare minimum, I'm keeping a job, I'm keeping the salary, so the risk is very low.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's why I'm not in corporate anymore. So talk to us now about, first of all, what triggers did you see that compelled you to move from a sales training company to more of a pipeline signal company that really looks at, like you follow, people leaving companies. And I guess, where did that come from? And even talk to us a little bit about the human capital migration and the importance of having those insights of where those once great customers, now they're gone. How can you leverage them back through insights through a software like yours?
At Sales for Life, enabled 600 global customers, and we're talking like the Microsofts, the Intels, and the Thomson Reuters of the world. So global enterprise accounts. And every week, every month, every year, sellers would say to us, "This is amazing what you're teaching us. You're teaching us to monitor our total addressable market or set of named accounts, looking for these compelling events, these relationship signals. Challenge: I'm a busy sales professional. Can you do it for me?" And I would hear this over and over and over again. And in fact, in 2019, a cybersecurity customer pulled me into a boardroom, had a giant check in front of me, and said, "I will pay you to build something called a global command center. We're in the cybersecurity space. We monitor cyber threats. Could you monitor relationship changes in every account across the world for us?" Now, in 2019, when you own a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And as a sales training coach, I'd say, "No, my job is to enable you." And I turned it down. Ironically, the next year, COVID hits, uh, Sales for Life continues to grow, but it buys back some time for me. I was on 80 flights a year for 5 years. 50% of my year was on a plane or traveling. So now I've bought half my life back. And I turned to my business partner and I said, "Hey, this idea I've been kind of mulling around? What if we built a managed service that migrates towards a SaaS software that does this for sellers?" Because there seems to be a huge market for it. And ironically, it is a much larger market than those that want to be trained. And so that's where it all began. We knew that the play worked. We've been training 250,000 sellers, had made certification videos on Vidyard about how they booked meetings, reverse engineering their customer base and following their fans into prospects. So all we had to do was do the homework for them. And that's what we created. We created a do it for you business that buys back the seller's time by monitoring everybody that leaves your customers to go into other customers or prospects, every job change and promotion, every stick of competitive intelligence out of LinkedIn. We route that sales intelligence into our customer CRM as tasks or leads, so that the sellers have the answers to all their the prospecting or customer success needs directly in their CRM. And it's become hugely successful because, again, it was time tested for so long. It
Mm-hmm.
just needed to be mechanized in the way that a seller wants to acquire that information.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it sounds like you've done it in a paint by numbers kind of way for them, right? You're making it very easy for them in your sales training. You've identified the problem, but then they come to you because what is this, that 65% of what we do is that not actually selling. We're not customer facing. It's all these admin tasks and even doing the research leading up to it. Most sellers want to be in front of their customer, want to sell. So you're removing the friction.
Yeah, there was a Gartner study that showed that 13% of a seller's week is actually inside tools like LinkedIn, mining, looking,
Hmm.
researching. And this is an important piece for your audience. If you're a sales leader, you have to always separate everything that somebody does into sub stages. And there's $5 an hour tasks and there's $500 an hour value creators. Entrepreneurs learn this really fast. So as a seller, you pay them to do outcomes, book meetings. Most is kind of like the leading indicator. Do deals, win business revenue for your company. Ideally, to win 5 to 7 times more their desk fee, more their operating cost. So that's every minute that they are on a demo, crafting a proposal, negotiating a contract. That's worth $500 an hour to you. Every minute that they are not doing that is a $5 an hour operating expense. but it's detracting from your $500 an hour revenue value creators. So to buy back those sellers' time at scale and watch thousands of people leave your customer base going into thousands of prospects, it takes an army of sellers to try to do this on their own, and they end up missing most of the market because it's a giant correlation machine that has to happen. And that's what we did is for the couple $1,000s a month, we're able to buy back all that time and completely change the way that a seller operates, because now they don't have to do any of that work. They just execute.
Hmm. I mean, what a great business case. I think, I always say the currency we trade is time. And you just, you said that even for yourself, you're on 80 flights, you're getting your time back, but also we all want to be mindful of people's time and exchanging it for value. So if we can replace those $5 jobs with, a software such as yours, we're putting the tools right into their hand. We're making it very seamless, but it's allowing them to break through the noise and think about what that does for their confidence and just the repeatability. Because I would imagine over time, they're starting to look at the patterns and like, oh, this came up. Like they could perhaps start searching for some of these things on their own. Again, I know that's time, but they're seeing the value in it versus just, I get the answer. Well, this is, or the output. Well, this is, why. And because I think it's just, we need to see that's what business acumen is like. Why is this important? Why did the system spit this out? You know?
And we always enable the sellers if they're a non-pass sales for life customer, so they didn't go through training and understand this. This is the first thing that we do. We enable the sellers. What is a signal? Why should you care? What do you do with a signal when you get it? What are best practices? And help them understand who you're about to call. Do not just press play a vanilla message using your sales outreach tools, because you are about to engage somebody that 3 months ago used to work at one of your happy customers and was part of the buying committee and
Mm-hmm.
used your solution.
Mm-hmm.
You do not want to just like click send. Hi, my name is blank. Would you like to meet? Yeah, like, this is a fan. Treat them as a fan.
Well, it's a missed opportunity. It's just like, you played that card too early, and if you were just patient, you could have really served you well. But think about the recipient. They're thinking, that's Jamie, we worked together for 3 years. Why is he sending me this, this scripted robotic email? We're buddies.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So when you say those who haven't gone through sales for life in a signal, what for some people, how would you define a signal?
A signal comes in three different flavors. A signal is a piece of sales intelligence. Those three broadest categories, number one is called buying intent. And I'm going to speak outside of pipeline signals here for a second. Two of these three signal categories we don't do. The first one's called buying intent. These are hand raisers, people that are raising their hand, Googling keywords, writing contact us forms, and asking and consuming information to make informed decisions. And technology can tell you what they're reading, what they're downloading, and so forth. Number two is called product usage, also known as workload consumption. This is a category that is emerging through technology. You sell Yeti water bottles, as an example, and you do well selling to companies that use Salesforce as their CRM, that like to do marketing campaigns, and they like to send Yetis as gifts as part of their campaigns. Well, there's technology that will tell you who are all the Salesforce users in software, as an example. So product usage are companies that tell you who uses what, and is that a great integration or fit for your business. The third category is a relationship, and they are either related in three ways. They are interrelated to a customer of yours, they are not related, but there has been a compelling event change, or three, they're interrelated to a competitor of yours. So a friend versus foe. And so, wouldn't you want to know all the human capital? The humans are the ones that make decisions in business. Wouldn't you want to know, are they a friend or a foe? Where did they come from? How are they interconnected to our customers? You take that trifecta of information, being sales intelligence, put it in the same spot in your CRM. And so that as a seller, the seller's job is to triangulate and interpret that intelligence to say, wow, this account has somebody who just Googled us And at the same time, they have a brand new chief information security officer that came from our customer. We got to give these guys a call.
But how amazing is that that's just that full picture? And think about as salespeople, we can only focus on what we can control, but there's also a lot of unknown and variables. And even what you said, the relationship, the friend or foe. Imagine you're working a deal and you're looking at the buyer's journey and you're like, I'm ticking off everything. And then you realize, oh, their new CFO is from our competitor. Hmm.
100%.
A- a-
Deselection and deprioritization is equally as important time
mhm.
management as selection and prioritization.
Yeah. Well, disqualify out. I mean, once you know, even understanding what, okay, that's the roadblock. He's going to go with the other guys. But just knowing that versus that saved us 6 months. Thank you so much.
I have a real story about that. So I was at a sales kickoff with a cybersecurity customer. We were doing a team-based workshop, and we every table had to reverse engineer a key account, looking for signals to get prepared for a key account plan. So one of the tables was assigned Harley Davidson, and all of a sudden, about a half hour into this workshop, I see a lady in the corner crying. Like this is a first for me. I've spoken at a lot of events, haven't seen tears. And I come over, I said, everything okay? And she's like, you can't believe it. So Harley Davidson, the account we're working at, was actually my account. And I've been working it for 8 months. And it took us only 5 minutes to reverse engineer the key stakeholders, only to realize that the chief operating officer just recently came from our direct competitor. And now I know we kept getting projects trying to get started. They would go to proposal, they would go to tender, and then somewhere at like signature, they would die.
Hmm.
And it's because the COO was probably getting this information going, oh, we don't need to use them. I used to work at their competitor. Let's bring in Johnny, my buddy, and let's do the deal there. This is it would have saved her 8 months. And in an organization where the average seller might do 4 deals a year, her year's destroyed. And all it took was 5 minutes to figure this out.
I mean, that's amazing story, Jamie. But why do you think people don't reverse engineer things and start with the end in mind? And even, I do this a lot in discovery. I'm like, what's your goal? Okay, what information do you need? Okay, therefore, what questions do you need to be asking? Like, it's all start there. It seems very intuitive to me, but why do you think people don't do that?
Remember how you and I started the call where we talked about selling is either a left brain or right brain? You and I both see the world of selling as a left brain exercise. Most sellers see it as black magic and an art. And so there's two parts to it. One is to what seems intuitive to you and I use the word reverse engineering like 50 times a day. And like I'll get my kids to reverse engineer the time they need to leave the house
Hmm.
to what time they need to put peanut butter on their toast. But that's how I think.
Hmm.
Um, so that's half of the equation, and the other half is it comes back to job versus career vocation, and it is I'm going to do the things that are asking me and nothing more,
Hmm.
and I'm just going to press play on my sales loft account versus those that are going to step back, measure twice, cut once, and go, let me think of how I would do this. If somebody had not taught me anything, what does my instincts tell me I should do? And like think outside the box. They just
Hmm.
won't do it because that's not part of the role in the remit.
And I think that comes down to who you are as a person. Like, are you curious? Do you want to find things out? Because, first of all, sales, I always believe is a profession. It's not just like clock in, clock out, right? I always held it in high regard. I always, was proud to be a salesperson, even though it did get a bad rap. But I just think in life, it's like I don't know. Do you want to win or not? Do you want to come out ahead in anything? Well, then like look, and maybe you have to be burned a few times and go like, you know what? I went forward and I missed a few steps, and now you're like, well, let's start at the end and work backwards. So interesting your approach on it. It just still baffles me a little bit.
And great top producers make so much money because they're so good. Like I'll tell you a story. One of my friends is the SVP of corporate development, head of M&A at a multi-billion-dollar company, and they are buying companies like you and I buy bubblegum. And long of the short is he was showing me the dozens of their sellers that are $1 million a year T4. We call them in Canada T4, so W2 or something like that in the United States, or 1099. I can't remember what they call it. Salaried employees. Dozens of their sellers are making $1 million a year. Then he showed on the other chart the number of CEOs and entrepreneurs that pay themselves even a fraction of that. The average CEO of a software company makes 150 grand a year, 200 grand a year. Like, that's the base salary of a great seller. In every growing company, great sellers make more than the CEO. And the CEO just gets the big giant windfall at the end
If
if something
yeah.
magical happens. People and sellers don't realize that you get the flexibility, the autonomy, you get everything an entrepreneur gets, but you don't have to burden with all the risk. If you're great, you're an entrepreneur. You get to build a business within a business.
What do you say about when you talk about signals, happy years? Because what I see is, it's physical verifiers that things are moving from the buyer side. And I just can tell you a lot of times I was coaching and they're like, it's going to go through and, I'm really hopeful and it was a great meeting. And it's like, show me what the data says. How are you moving along? What kind of competitive intelligence, what data do you have to support that? So what do you say to those who have that confirmation bias and they're hearing what they would like to hear? And then at the end of it, they've invested all this time, they can't get back and they're nowhere ahead.
And that's a subjective versus an objective seller. And that's a seller that, whether that's the organization or the seller hasn't designed the right demo to close process. It means that they do not have a qualification and qualification scoring process. They do not use post demo buying intent. So, trackability of how that person's engaged from the moment that you close that demo until closed one. Like, so you say that this is like in commit in your CRM as
Hmm.
a great deal. Show me the engagement that they've had from over the last 3 weeks. What are they consuming? How are they learning? Have they done these steps? And if they haven't done any of those, then you know they're just in what we call the stage by building consensus. They're trying to get all the spinning plates going internally, but they're not ready to buy.
Hmm. And sometimes, I would ask like, why can't we build that into even our CRM where it's like, is this single threaded? Like you have to have you're talking to three people. You have like certain commitments that will just help the buyer increase their chance of moving to that next step. Because people, I don't know, they're still stuck and they're going through the motions and they're just scratching their head. And it's like, well, there's critical elements that you need, especially that, cost of inactivity. Like 60% are going to end in no change. Why? What are you not doing that's going to push them forward? So, Jamie, if there's people thinking now, wow, I'm kind of doing it all wrong, but I'm grateful for the awareness. It's not, a sad story. It's inspiring, and they're looking to really break through. What are three things they could start doing now, whether it's even a mindset shift, to just start taking things to the next level and really engaging their buyer so that their buyer feels that they are talking to someone who genuinely wants to help them?
Um, Two tactics and maybe one strategy. Two tactics would be, I would commit to being a thought leader in your space, and then start small. Make a video a day. Get people recognizing that you understand your vertical, your market, so that when they come on a call with you, they don't see you as just like a a demo jockey or whatever the bad names are for the people that press play on the demo. And I had once a CEO call it the demo doers. Like, like, you don't want to be that.
Mm-hmm.
Number two is get comfortable with using sales intelligence to make decisions. Number one, it'll arm you to guide you to the right accounts that have high conversion. It will save you a mountain time. We are just a piece to a puzzle. Pipeline signals is one category amongst a series of categories around sales intelligence. But without that, you are literally calling out of a phone book. And then from a strategy standpoint, become a massive consumer of things like this: podcasts, books. I listen to a revolving set of about 5 to 7 podcasts every week. For me, I'm really, in the last couple of years, I've wanted to work on new skill sets. financial acumen around being a CEO, better financial acumen, mergers and acquisitions. I'm growing a business that is a built to sell type of business, right? And so I need to learn from day one. How do I build this and scale this the right way so it can be acquired? But I've taken it upon myself
Mhm.
to consume a massive amount of intelligence around that. Uh, I think a lot of sellers just aren't reading and watching.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Thank you for those are great, great 3 points, and I think, just that ABL, I say, is always be learning, and that kind of addresses all 3 of them, that you gain that credibility initially with your customers. You are comfortable, having these conversations, and, you're just considered a trusted advisor, and you stand out in your space, and the 3rd one is free. These podcasts are free, YouTube videos, buy a book and just upskill yourself.
Absolutely.
Well, Jamie, you've been a wealth of knowledge here and inspiration. So, for those who are listening who would like to learn a little bit more about you, even your book, Social Selling Mastery or Pipeline Signals, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
I would go to the pipelinesignals.com website, contact us, come to LinkedIn, connect with me, Jamie Shanks. I'm happy to help.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for your time and sharing your insights. And it was a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you so much. Great seeing you.
My pleasure.